Welcome to the Get Real Movies podcast. My name is Daniel Chadwick Schubat. I'm your host, and this is episode 8, where Mason and I will be talking about the new Netflix release that isn't really a Netflix release because they kind of bought it when it was already made, Hitman. Mason, welcome once again.
Always a pleasure to be on the show, Daniel. Thanks again for having me.
Yes, well, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show, and I am very, very excited because this is the last show we are recording together before we record a show together in your home in Alexandria, Virginia. If anyone wants to find Mason, his address is bleep.
It's at 6969 Awesome Guy Lane. You can find me there chilling with a stogie. I'm sure I'll be just happy and fine seeing the new visitors.
Well, I will try and bring some stogies with me, and I will definitely be bringing some Canadian whiskey for you. So as long as I'm welcome with those two offerings, I will be there.
Absolutely. I'm always happy to have some delicious Canadian whiskey and what I can only assume is like smoked moose. I will be looking forward to both of those delicacies in my home.
Yes, some smoked moose, and if you're lucky, maybe some black bear. It depends on what I catch on my way down to you.
The true greatest predator of Canada is not the moose, but it is the black bear.
It probably is. Or the grizzly. Or the
Somebody look
polar
up
bear.
Those stats, yeah.
There's lots of great predators in Canada, but at least we don't have poisonous animals, except for one frog, I think. So we avoid the Florida related animals, which is a good thing.
Yeah, avoiding Florida in general is a good thing.
I don't concur with that statement. There's many wonderful people in Florida, and I would rather not alienate our listeners. So just ignore Mason and his short-sightedness there.
Hey! All I remember is that 30 Rock called it the penis of America, and I believe that is a valid interpretation. But to all the Floridians out there, hey, I've got
including your family.
Yeah, plenty of family down there. Love you all. Just we got some issues that we need to maybe talk through. This podcast is really going off the rails. We haven't talked about movies at all.
Well, that's okay. We start with politics. Next, we go into religion. Then we talk about the movies. So
yeah, you get the full menu with Daniel and Mason.
So Mason, before we get into Hitman and this amazing, based partly on a true story, I want to ask: has there anything you've been watching over the past few weeks that you want to tell the audience about?
I've got a twofer. I've been catching up on the show You're the Worst, which is directed by Adam Wingard, I believe, who directed a couple of the new Godzilla movies, like the ones that are actually decent, like the Kong and Godzilla versus Kong. Like big blockbuster fun, not like going to win any Oscars anytime soon. But show is fantastic, really, really great. And to get ready for this movie, which was directed by Richard Linklater, I wanted to kind of remember who that was because the name stuck in my brain. I was like, who was this? And the guy's got a fantastic spread of past work that I've actually touched on that I didn't even realize was him. So I watched Boyhood 2 days ago because that movie sticks in my brain, and also the main character is named Mason. So, selfishly, it works out well for me.
Yes, and it's quite the film when you consider how it was made and the whole behind the scenes process. It was quite a fantastic story. I think in my mind almost better than the film itself. But I still enjoyed it quite a bit, and I know it got a lot of its, how would you say that? A lot of its laurels or flowers during the whole award season. In was it 2015 it came out? No, 2014?
I don't remember when it came out. That sounds about right. I just remember the great Oscars joke that Tina Fey said, where it's like, it's a common misconception that women over 30 can't win Oscars. And then she's like, so the key is you just have to start before you're 30 and then finish afterwards, and then you win the awards, because Patricia Arquette won Best Supporting Actress, I believe.
That's correct,
yes. That floored everybody, and that was great. But no, the movie's fantastic. Obviously, Patricia Arquette's fantastic. Ethan Hawke is great. Highly recommend. And Richard Linklater, I don't know why, but the name did not stick in my head like somebody like Christopher Nolan would. But he's got a fantastic lineup, like School of Rock, Everybody Wants Some, which I know is a past favorite of yours, Daniel. Great lineup. So looking forward to what he does with this Hitman and whatever he does in the future.
All right. Well, I have a two for you as well. Firstly, I'm going to join you there in the Linklater love, and I watch Everybody Wants Some again for I don't know the how many time, probably in the 20s or 30s by now. But I absolutely love that film. It's such a great it's such a great portrait of what teams are about and the relationships between men. And I think it just encapsulates it perfectly. It's timeless, even though it's set in the 80s. It's just a really fun film. And I think it just gets better on each rewatch for me. It's also my first introduction to Glenn Powell, who I will talk a bit more about later, but I really loved him in that film. And Blake Jenner and Zoe Deutsch, and I think Deutsch is the right way. I might have gotten that wrong. I apologize.
Deutsch, maybe? Deutsch,
Deutsch.
Something with a DEU.
Yeah, exactly. And the rest of the cast is just fantastic as well. Wyatt Russell, I'm a big fan of him. He's definitely got some Kurt Russell genes for sure. And
oh yeah, he's got the jaw.
I think, yes, he does. And this film just really kind of encapsulates what Richard Linklater is about, which is about going back in time, but finding themes that really relate to anyone who has grown up and had a semi-decent life. There's some challenges in his film, but they mainly deal with, the normal challenges for maybe the first people in first world countries growing up. And it's very relatable for a lot of people in Western cultures. Maybe is not for people in other parts of the world, but I'm a big fan of his. And I think someone put it perfectly. I was reading somewhere on Twitter and they said that Linklater is not a director that comes up when they think about their favorite directors of all time, but you look at his filmography and every film of his you just really like or love even. And I feel the same way. And I think he would definitely be up there for me as one of my favorite directors. And I'm excited to talk about his latest film. The second film I want to mention before we get into the review and talking about Hitman a bit was I did watch Furiosa in theaters.
Oh, excellent.
And I do have to say that I'm very disappointed to be seeing how it's being pulled out of theaters this last week. I think it was absolutely fantastic. I love Mad Max Fury Road and I love Furiosa. I think in terms of prequels, they're overdone in Hollywood. But if prequels were all like this, where they're still so original and go so well with the original film, the original that was also a sequel, then I'm all for it. And George Miller, whenever he makes a film now, even if it's Happy Feet 3, I will be there because I can't say enough good things about it. I'm definitely going to watch it again in theaters. And if people haven't or are a little wary of seeing it, I implore you to go see it, even if it's just for Chris Hemsworth's amazing villain.
He's definitely a very charismatic sort, and it's good to see that other side of him as an actor for sure. But I absolutely agree that George Miller is an absolute mastermind as he markets himself in his trailers. He knows how to get the job done.
And his wife can edit the shit out of a film. It is crazy.
Excellent editor. I love the story behind that. I actually have a friend who was telling me how he thinks that Fast and Furious is better than Furiosa, and I had to stop myself from putting my hands around his neck. I'm like, come on. So if he's listening, you know who you are. If you're listening to this, you have a second opinion, a movie master telling you Furiosa is goddamn brilliance. Check it out.
Yeah, were you feeling a bit Glenn Powell at the end of Hitman there? No spoilers.
A little bit, yeah. I was channeling Ron. No, I'm actually glad that you brought up Glenn Powell being introduced to you through Everybody Wants Some as well. Actually, the first time I saw him was in this show called Scream Queens. It was this sort of horror spoof a little bit. And it was actually a decent show, at least for the season 1 and 2 that I watched. But that's where he came from for me. And I was like, oh, okay, now he's getting into movies, and he's got a little thing there. And now he's gone straight to leading man like 6 years later. His rise has been meteoric, and good for him.
Yeah, and it's really fascinating, but I actually found out that my introduction to him wasn't in Everybody Wants Some. That's just when I became real conscious about him, but it was actually in Spy Kids 3. He was a kid actor in that film, crazily enough. So,
who was he in Spy Kids 3?
He was one of the kids' superheroes. So I don't know exactly what his character name was, but for people who want to go rewatch that movie, keep a keen eye out for Glenn Powell, a young Glenn Powell with braces, I believe.
This requires investigation. We need to get to the bottom of this. Was he the kid that kept beating up Junie, like the brother of the president's daughter or whatever?
I don't believe so, but I will find the tweet because I saved it and I will send it to you because it was something he tweeted out himself.
Quick, our audience, if you know who Glenn Powell is in Spy Kids 3, put down the reference and then also tell us how old you were at the time so we can all feel bad about that together.
Yes. It even makes me feel old, so that's saying something, Mason.
And I remember loving those movies too.
I did too.
Yeah, Robert Rodriguez has quite the varied lineup of movies. Like I watched Machete the other day. Is that a departure from Spy Kids?
Just a tiny bit, but then again, Mad Max Fury Road is also a departure from Happy Feet. So I like directors that could do something different. I think Martin Scorsese is the best example of that with Hugo and Goodfellas.
Yeah, very different sides of the spectrum, but nails it
for sure. But let's get right into Hitman. For the people who haven't seen the film yet or haven't heard about the film yet, Hitman is the very weirdly true, but not fully true story about Gary Johnson, who worked for the police department. It wasn't actually in New Orleans, but in the film it's set in New Orleans. And Gary Johnson, for many years, was undercover for the police, catching people who wanted to hire hitmen. Some people say he was entrapping them. Other people say he was getting bad people off the street. I'll let the audience make their mind up during the film and maybe reading the different articles. But it was based on an article written in the Texas Monthly magazine, I believe, back in 2001 by Skip Hollandsworth. And for people who don't know who Skip Hollandsworth is, Richard Linklater actually made another movie with Matthew McConaughey and Jack Black a few years ago called Bernie. And Skip Hollandsworth actually wrote that film. So he's sort of a master of the true crime genre. Obviously, with this film, they went a different route. They did make the essence of the story true, but a lot of it was sort of fabricated, and a lot of it was added to make this film kind of go well.
Creative liberties as needed, yeah.
Yes, exactly. And that's why I wanted to make this podcast, because I wanted to find out what was true and what was not true when they made a true story film. Sadly, Gary Johnson is no longer with us, so I couldn't get an interview there, but I was happy to say that the second best option was to talk to Mason about this film, because I love talking to him as much as I love talking to the real people.
Honestly, I'm not even mad. A silver medal compared to Gary Johnson, I will take proudly. This man being able to go toe-to-toe with people that are either stone cold killers or people that want to hire stone cold killers has got to be nerve-wracking as hell. And the fact that he did this regularly and with style is incredible. So no offense taken. I wear that silver medal proudly.
All right, we'll take it. So this film now is out on Netflix everywhere for people who do want to watch it after the podcast, or take a break, go watch it, and then listen to the rest of it. But it was written by Glenn Powell and Richard Linklater. They wrote it together. Richard Linklater directed it, and it stars Glenn Powell, Adria Arjona, Austin Emilio, Molly Bernard. It's got a great cast of people that you'll definitely recognize, but also it is a starring vehicle for Glenn Powell, and maybe he wrote it that way, maybe he didn't, but I'm all.
Oh, he definitely wrote it that way, yeah. I mean, if you're the star of the movie, you're going to write yourself into a good position. That just makes sense.
Yes, for sure. So, Mason, let's get right into our thoughts on the film. I'm going to let you start us off. What are your thoughts on Hitman?
I just see this as a excellent vehicle for Glenn Powell's career. It's a good film. It's a great film even. It's really fun. I had a lot of good times just going through it, watching it with my wife. And the entire time, I just couldn't get over the fact of how subtle Glenn Powell's personality shifts were for his character. Like, the story behind this is that he is a mild-mannered professor who, when the police need him, he switches his personality over to this hard-as-nails hitman for these interviews undercover. And the way he does it, like, you know, he slicks his hair back, he takes his glasses off, but that's really it, and like physically. And then the way he presents himself, the way he delivers his lines, the way he holds his body language is so minusculely changed from how it was, and yet when it's there, you really notice. And I could not help but be ridiculously impressed, because all I've ever seen Glenn Powell really do is kind of the cocky frat boy. And that's fine, like, he does that very well. But to see him not only act as a elderly professor, which I really didn't believe he could pull off, just like seeing the story synopsis, but seeing him do that and then shift to the more traditional, like, okay, cocky guy that's got like a lot of sex appeal going on for him was really impressive. And I was shocked by it. So seeing him do that with some amazing chemistry with Adria Arjona, I'm going to terribly pronounce that last name, I apologize. It was really entertaining, and seeing it all just come together in a nice bowed up package was sight to behold. I loved it.
Yeah, well, I'm really glad. I think this is the first time that we're fully in agreement on a film so
There
far.
we go.
I hope there's many more to come, but I loved it as well. I wouldn't rank it as high as some of the other Richard Linklater offerings, such as Dazed and Confused, Everybody Wants Some. I'd probably put it above Boyhood in terms of his recent films. Just for me. That's
interesting.
Okay. That's okay, but we'll see. I'll give it a few years before I really kind of rank them that high.
Our agreement was so short-lived, Daniel.
That's okay. It's okay. But I totally agree on Glenn Powell. He's a really fascinating actor right now because he's really picking and choosing what type of roles he wants to jump onto and jump into. He, like you said, he has done the frat boy, the cocky, cocksure guy. And I think he's also done something different than that with this film. But he just seems to be making the right choices as of late. Obviously, earlier in the year, Anyone But You was a huge film, bringing rom-coms back, him and Sydney Sweeney, all the drama around that film. And then, obviously, I've seen him in Everybody Wants Some, but a movie that he was in that he was huge for his career was Top Gun Maverick as well. Became really fun and recognizable from that, and I don't know many people who have disliked that film. And then later in the summer, he's doing Twister, and that even looks really enjoyable and something that I'd want to see, even though when I first heard about it, I was like, why are they redoing that? But
Twisters, you got to remember the S with the $sign, like James Cameron with the Aliens.
Of course. Sorry. Yes, of course.
Shame on you.
My bad. How could I forget that, Mason?
It's okay. I forgive you, but the Twisters may not. You'll have to fight them by yourself.
Yes, I'll be driving through the tornadoes on my way to see you in Virginia. They will have their revenge.
Just America's weather coming after you, if nothing else.
Yes, exactly. But I thought it was a wonderful film. Obviously, I loved the script. It was very talky. And what you said about him switching into the different characters, not only Gary and Ron, but also the different characters that he inhibited for different people that he was trying to get to confess. He was a Russian. He was a Brit. He was doing his best Patrick Bateman impression. It was just really enjoyable seeing him take up all these slightly different roles within one film, but doing a really phenomenal job with all of them. And I think that we have really a bona fide movie star on our hands. I think he's the next real Tom Cruise type character where it seems like everything he touches right now turns to gold. The critics love it. Most people that I know who've seen it loved it as well. And I was just really impressed once again with not only Richard Linklater's work, but Glenn Powell, obviously, and then as well Adria Arjona. I think that she has a lot of range. And when you look at her filmography, you're a little bit underwhelmed, but then you realize that she probably hasn't been given a lot of great roles yet. But I really enjoyed her in Andor as well. I thought she was fantastic in that. And
it's a fantastic show.
Yeah, and I think she has a real bright future ahead of her as well as a potential leading lady.
I think that this is a vehicle for all parties involved. There's a part in the film where Glenn Powell's character Gary, aka Ron for his hitman side, Gary is giving a lecture to students, and he kind of shifts himself a little bit. Like he starts as a dorky professor, but then in the middle of the speech, like starts being more confident, starts strutting a bit. And one of the students randomly says, "Hey, when did our professor get hot?" And I personally didn't really realize it, but when she said it, I was like, holy shit. Like yes, something that he's done just with the way he's carrying himself is completely different from the person that he was. And I didn't even realize it until it was pointed out. This is movie star material. This is a launch pad for the future of his career for sure. Seeing him, I would argue that his big break was Top Gun Maverick. Like, of course, he's been in movies and TV shows before that. Top Gun Maverick was seen by everyone, everywhere. Well, most places anyway. Seeing him now being able to be the leading man in these roles, like you said, with Anyone But You, and now with The Hitman, and whatever is going to come down the line, I'm really excited to see what he does next. I mean, Richard Linklater is a solid bet, and now I know that for sure, doing the research into him. but this is just a promising sign of things to come. It's fun to watch with your spouse or your girlfriend, boyfriend, what have you. It's just fun to watch by yourself. It's a good time. It's just an enjoyable film that you won't regret spending 2 hours on.
Yeah, and I heard someone joke about this where they said Tom Cruise is taking the summer off so he could see who could fill his shoes. Is it Austin Butler with the Bikeriders? Is it Glenn Powell with Hitman? Is it Michael B. Jordan? Who is it? We're going to find out. And I found that quite funny, but he is also
the choices for sure. Yeah.
He is also busy making Mission Impossible 8. And I've heard that's going a little over budget, but if anyone's going to make a movie over budget work, it's Tom Cruise, I believe.
Oh yeah. No, I'll be first in seats for Dead Reckoning Part 2, no matter how ridiculous the stunts are and how many lives were put on the line to make Tom Cruise's stunt vehicle happy.
Well, and he usually does it himself. It's the only thing that makes me think that Scientology might not be ridiculous, because that man is invincible.
He was blessed by Xenu, yes. He was taken up to L. Ron Hubbard's mothership and told he was the chosen one. That's about the extent of everything I know about Scientology. I know from South Park. That's about it.
That's about 10 times what I know. So good on you, Mason. I love it. I love you educating the audience.
There you go. Now you know more about Scientology thanks to Mason Manuel. I'm sure we're all collectively happy about that. Goodness gracious.
Yes, exactly. But
so what did you think about the chemistry between the two leads? Like, did you think it was really like the number one factor of this, or do you think it was mostly Glenn Powell himself?
Well, I think like we mentioned before, this is a Glenn Powell starring vehicle, but Adria really sort of steals some of the scenes she's in. One that really stands out is the note scene. And I know that a lot of people have been talking about this, so it's the main really talking point of the movie. And I think there are a few other scenes that I really enjoy as well. But the note scene where, and this is a spoiler alert for people who haven't seen the movie, so if you haven't seen the movie, maybe watch it first, then listen to us again.
Spoiler warning.
But
we should have like an official like noise for that, like spoiler warning, or like an alarm of some sort.
I can work on that. We have to make it original though. So maybe we'll both of us say it at the same time, and we'll make it some sort of how would you call that? Some sort of harmony. We can sing it together. Spoiler warning.
Spoiler. I'm down. But we'll workshop it. We'll do it when you're in person here.
Yes, of course. But for people who have seen the movie, it's the scene where the police think that she, Adria, her character, I guess it's Madison, has killed her husband. And they send in Gary, a.k.a. Ron, and really want him to get her to confess to him. And they've already had a bit of a fight because he knows that she did kill him. And it's just a lot of drama and a lot of stakes are suddenly brought into the film that before that was just seen as kind of a quirky romantic comedy almost. And then
she's a little bit nuts, but it's worth it, right? No, she wouldn't actually kill him, right?
No, never. But we found out she does. And then Gary goes into the house wired up, ready to really, put her in prison for life. But he uses the Notes app from his iPhone to warn her because they have audio only. So he's showing her notes and he's writing it as he goes, and they're improvising, and it looks like an improv scene that's somehow been masterfully created. And I'd love to have seen how they really filmed this scene, because it was just them playing off each other, and you could really sense the chemistry, and you could sense the playfulness of the scene as well. And that really stood out. So I think that's one of my favorite scenes in the film. I think that was both of them adding to it. And as much as this is, like you said, Glenn Powell's starring vehicle, I have high hopes that this is Adria Arjona's starring vehicle as well, and that it catapults her into more meaty roles that she can really dig into.
I hope so. This is an impressive bout by everybody. I'm curious, out of all of the personalities that Glenn Powell enacts in this film, what was your favorite one? You were going into his various assassin types earlier. What was your number one pick?
Well, as someone who enjoys a little bit of improv, I really like the Patrick Bateman impression. I thought that was very funny. But I did like the freckly British man who acted like a sort of creepy, almost Clockwork Orange type character.
I was going to say the same thing. Yeah, like the Snape looking guy was my favorite as well. It's just so out of left field, but he nails it. He doesn't make you question it at all.
No, and it is a very amusing in the way he kind of shapes his characters to the people that he is trying to see if they would actually kill someone. And as they mentioned in the film, it's very much once you've met with a hitman and you're handing that money over, you've really premeditated in your head. There were lots of chances to not do this. So these aren't good people who are just, crimes of passion or things like that. These are people that really want to take someone's life, but just not by their own hands. So it plays with the line of entrapment. And I know there's a lot of, ill feelings about that, especially in today's world where you find out a lot of stories about, oh, there was an entrapment and 18 cops played the bad guys and they, convinced 2 guys to do something bad. It's a bit different than, whereas in this situation is obviously a lot more maybe cut and dry. So it makes the film not really, it doesn't make you question the moral quandary of it as much, and allows you to just come into the film and just enjoy it.
Right. It focuses more on the relatable romance of it, the human problem of it, versus the potential legal moral ambiguity that is there. And I mean, I'm not smart enough to dive into that, but I think I will put the benefit of that on Richard Linklater, like going back through his past filmography. And I think you kind of touched on this earlier. Each one of these films deals with some big human issue, but at the end of the day, it is human. Like, you can see it happen, and you can see the logical human choices made that create these kind of crazy scenarios. Like School of Rock, okay, like a down on his luck musician needs to find some money somewhere, and here's just an opportunity that perfectly dropped into his lap. Hell yeah, I'm gonna take advantage of that. And okay, same with this guy. Like, okay, he's a professor, but he feels like something's missing. He wants to go out and do more. And okay, here's another perfect opportunity that he just somehow it clicks with him. He's not a drama guy. He's not a playwright or a professional actor for his character in the movie. But when he finds something he likes, he's going to lean all into it and do his best. And it's just something that is relatable and good to see, and also showcases the downside of that, of when you find something you like, you got to realize that you got to be okay with the other side of it as well. Like, nothing is perfect, and you got to deal with the fallout of that. And I think witnessing that in this movie was just as enjoyable as watching his rise. So great film, great cast, great plot, really just a good time. I mean, I'm not going to put it in Oscar category, but I would definitely give this a rewatch multiple times and highly recommend it.
Yeah, and Mason, before I give my rating as well, and I'd like to, get your official rating, but what was one of the scenes that really stuck out to you, besides maybe, if you enjoyed the note scene? Was there another scene that really kind of captured you and that you still think about when you think about this film?
Absolutely, and I will put out another spoiler warning harmony here. But the thing that stuck most with me was when he is in between his personalities. So Gary and Ron are kind of combining at this point. It's close to like the second, third ending of the film. And he finds out that his girlfriend has killed somebody. And he goes into her house acting as Ron, acting all confident, suave, kind of ferocious Ron. And then when she admits, like, okay, yeah, I killed him, because she thinks he's a hitman, suddenly the persona fades a lot, and he's like, oh God, oh God, oh God. But the switch is just so real, so natural. It never for once sticks in your mind saying, okay, this guy is just totally like full of it. He's a weird actor. And I know this because there are a couple of other like side actors in this movie where you definitely get that vibe of like, okay, this guy's not Southern at all, or okay, this guy's really hamming it up for the camera. There is a unspoken art to making this delivery seem natural, and that's a big part of like being a professional actor that is, I don't think, very much touched on as much as it should be. And this really showcases Glenn Powell's talent for that. So that sticks in my brain personally. What about you?
Yeah, well, I definitely agree. That was a great scene, and that was right before the note scene, and it sort of set the scene as well. So I thought those two scenes really went perfectly together. Say that 3 times fast: scene, scene, scene. But I think that was something that really stood out. And then one scene that I really enjoyed was when Gary hung up the phone, but the 2 detectives he was working with didn't hang up the phone, and we're talking about how hot Ron was and how much of a loser Gary was. and it showed the comedic chops of some of the other actors in the film. I think Retta, who plays Claudette, which is one of the police officers, and then Sanjay Rao, who is not someone I've seen before, but I quite enjoyed his comedic performance as well, and he was one of the other police officers. So that was the only other scene that I could really think of as a standout and a fun one from the film. But in terms of rating for me, I definitely would say this is one to watch in the theater. Obviously, it's out on Netflix, so if you watch it at home and you have a nice home theater experience, do that. I'm not going to say no, but if you can catch it in theater somehow, I definitely recommend watching it because it was a really fun one. And as much as I enjoy watching movies at home, I also enjoy watching movies in the theater, and that's our top rating I can give. So that's the one I'm going to give.
I'll follow suit. I will also say the theater, not because this film has any sort of visual aspect that needs to be blown up big, but this is a film that's good to watch around people. This is kind of a good community experience, either with your spouse, like we were talking about, boyfriend, girlfriend, or just with like people in general. Like this is one that you want to kind of be yelling things at the screen of and hear other people's takes on it. That's usually annoying. This is one of those rare times where it's kind of fun, like kind of having that communal experience together. So yeah, go to the theater, have a great time. And enjoy the sexiness. There's a lot of sexiness in this movie.
It is a very sexy movie for either men or women. They will enjoy it for sure. It was unexpected, but I understand why they do that. When you have two beautiful people headlining a movie, I guess they want to showcase not only their acting chops but their beauty as well.
I want it on the podcast record that Mason Manuel is very straight. At the same time, I was pointing out how attractive Glenn Powell was more than my wife was. Like at the end of it, she was giving me eye rolls because she's like, "Can you just shut up and watch the movie?" I was like, "But just look at him in the jacket and the strut and the way he talks." Like I'm like the guy on the phone when they thought they hung up. He's like, I would let Ron take me out to a nice dinner and then have his way with me. Like son of a gun, like the dude just knows how to make a smolder. I got to give props where props are due.
Well, I'd have to put Glenn Powell right there, up there, along with Ryan Gosling in terms of man crushes for sure. Mason and I are both straight men with very beautiful, lovely partners. But
I think we're finding out live on the podcast that maybe we're not as straight as we thought we were. That we're gonna have to make another show about that.
Mason, you can appreciate a man's beauty without having to be gay. Whenever I see my handsome friends, I always say they're handsome. So there's no problem with that. And we just got to accept it. Complimenting each other is a good thing.
Hey, love is love. And as long as we're supportive, that's fine with me.
Exactly. I love it. But I did want to say one last thing about Glenn Powell. Again, sorry for all this Glenn Powell loving, but it is a movie written by him and starring him, so I think it's excusable. But I do have to say, I see his career, and it was quite fascinating because I realized that Richard Linklater directed Bernie with Matthew McConaughey. I see his career very much alongside the way that Matthew McConaughey's career has been going as of late, but I see it without maybe the 10-year period where all McConaughey was making was romantic comedies, where Glenn Powell has been a lot more picky and choosy. I think he's also been given the choice to be more picky and choosy, and that was something he's wanted to do since the start. But in terms of charisma and acting ability, and I think Glenn Powell's someone to really watch out for in the next few years in terms of maybe having some Oscar nominated, potential Oscar buzz in the coming years as he grows as an actor as well.
Interesting. I don't know if he'll go that far or not, but either way, he's got my box office ticket ready to go. I'm really excited to see him in Twisters because that's him going back to his cocky frat boy kind of persona. Not to say that there's anything wrong with that. I'm just looking forward to seeing him be a rodeo Twister rider. We'll see how that goes.
Do you mean Twister $?
I do mean Twister $, yes.
That's all I'm going to call it from now on, Twister $.
Legendary. Can't wait.
But yeah, I can't wait either. Mason, next episode, we're going to be talking most likely about the Bikeriders together. It'll be our episode together in the flesh. I'm very much looking forward to that. Before I let us go and look forward to seeing you in the next week, I was thinking we could talk about some of our most anticipated films of the year, maybe some ones that are coming up in the summer or later in the year that you're looking forward to seeing and potentially talking about. Are there any on your mind, Mason?
Absolutely. I would love to give you some super award bait kind of film to show you how sophisticated I am. But honestly, after this whole discussion, the number one thing on my mind right now is Twister Money Sign. Twister's coming up, showing, again, just a Glenn Powell, and I think Lily James is his co-star, leading that. And I also love the original Twister. Like Helen Hunt was my boyhood crush back in the day. Loved her. And then I'll give you a twofer. I am also really looking forward to Deadpool and Wolverine, just because it's such a left turn for the usual Marvel Cinematic Universe MCU, and it's actively going to try to just be like, to hell with all of the MCU. We're going to do our own thing. And that franchise really needs a shot in the arm, and if anything can do it, I'm pretty sure this is it. So curious to see how they're going to pull that off. And also great to see Hugh Jackman back in the suit. Good to see what he'll be up to. All right, excited to see what he'll be up to.
It's finally back, finally in the suit, it feels like. I don't think we really ever saw him properly in the suit, except for maybe like one end credit scene. So that'll be definitely cool. I'm excited for both of those as well. One I'm really looking forward to is Trap, which is the M. Night Shyamalan film. I really am looking forward to that. I'm all here for the Josh Hartnett revival tour that he's been doing since Oppenheimer. Yeah. I think that trailer just drew me in. I didn't expect them to reveal things, but with M. Night, there's always going to be another twist or 20. So that is a film that I'm really looking forward to seeing in theaters. And then the other film I'm looking forward to is coming out later in the year. It is Paul Mescal, Denzel Washington, Ridley Scott, Gladiator 2. I can't wait for that film. I'm interested to see in what direction they go after Russell Crowe. And those are my two that I'm looking forward to the most.
I'm really curious to see if they can pull that off. Like, nothing about it in terms of its inception makes sense to me. But, I mean, great cast, great director behind the camera. It's got everything going for it except a reason to live. I'll keep my hesitation for post-release.
Indeed. But, Mason, thanks again for coming on with me, talking about this film, Hitman. I'm glad we both loved it. We'd love to hear what other people think about it. Leave a comment on any of our social medias, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, X, formerly known as Twitter. And
the artist formerly known as Twitter.
The artist formerly known as Twitter. And we're really looking forward to recording together the next episode. And we might even release that as a video on the different platforms. So really looking forward to that. Mason, I'll let you lead us out as per usual. Thanks again.
Well, thanks for having me on, Daniel. As always, I've had a great time. To our wonderful listening audience, if this podcast made you question how straight you were, be sure to leave us a comment. Maybe give us a follow, a like, maybe click that sweet, sweet share button. Either way, we love it to hear from you. So definitely give us a shout. But until next time, I've been Mason.
I've been Daniel.
And we'll see you at the movies. Bye, y'all.